The threats that we have received were deemed non-credible. There is a process for looking into these types of threats, these types of incidents. Because we are a state agency, we work closely with local, state, and federal agencies on situations like this. And I just want to take a minute to kind of remind the community that this was a crime against others. It was a crime committed. It flipped our community upside down. And someone thought that was okay to do. Someone needs to be held accountable. And we have focused our resources on trying to figure out who has done this to our community. This is not okay. And someone needs to be held accountable. Now that person could be in this room right now. Okay? It could be someone that's a member of our community that's in crisis, someone that could have gotten fired, someone who had an issue with ASI. It could be anybody. And it sucks to think that there may be someone out here who knows who did it and hasn't come forward. We're encouraging our community to come forward. If you know who did this, had anything to do with it, please let us know. Because this is not okay. We cannot accept this as the new norm. We cannot accept this as a new norm. It's bad enough as a nation. Active shooter is just, we're all living in fear. Not just here at school. When I go to the mall, when I go to a ball game, when I'm at the airport, when I go to the post, this is always in the back of my mind. And that's because of the profession, I'm wired that way. But now we have to teach our kids to think this way. I've been listening to the news about today's shooting, and it affects me personally because of what I do. But it's a shame this is what we have come to as a society. Now look around the room, a lot of you, you're much younger than I am. I remember a time where this was not an issue. This was not our biggest worry. But now I have to teach my 11 and 13-year-old how to run, hide, and fight at school or at the mall, and it's disheartening. But again, I want to let you know, in regards to what has happened, we have been safe. These incidents have been vetted. It is currently under investigation. Us as a department, we can't share all the details because a lot of times the details is what help us solve these crimes. We cannot give you all the details, then we would have no way of figuring out who did this to us. And that's our goal now. That is our goal now, to figure out who did this to us and why. And why. Our community members are coming forward. People have come with information, and we're looking into every bit of information that people are calling about. And I want to continue to promote that. Call us if you think you heard about something. Give us a call. Let us vet it. We'll make those calls. The library, the incident involved in the library. That was fourth-hand information that someone decided to put out on social media first, so we had to work fast. We contacted all the parties involved to see where did you see this? How did this come about? And that one was a total nothing. That was someone just decided to just chit-chat about it, and then it spread, and it grew, and it grew, and it grew. But let us do the legwork. If the community comes forward with information, we'll look into it. You can do it anonymously. A lot of times when, and again, I got so many things going on in my head, listening to the news about today's incident, and you kind of think to yourself, how can we stop this? How can we prevent it? What is the solution? What is the government doing? What is it gun control? Is it mental illness? Is it, you hear all kinds of reasons. Many times when these things occur, these are people in crisis. And so here at the university, we have things in place. When you see someone comes to you and they appear to be in crisis, we have resources. We have the care team. You can submit a care team report anonymously. It'll be looked into. When that report is submitted, my cell phone goes off, along with a number of other counterparts on campus, because we care. Those things are looked into. If someone's, going through something, you know, let's pick up on those signs. Let's report those changes in behaviors. Let's, refer them to CAPS. Let's, submit a care team report. That way someone can look into it before it reaches to a level where a person gets to a point where they feel like they need to commit some type or some acts of violence. It starts off, with small signs, and it works their way up till they get to the point to where, they feel, oftentimes it's considered, an act of suicide because, they anticipate engaging law enforcement and not making it through the event. That's considered an act of suicide, just like any other types of acts of suicide. And just like any other, acts of suicide, there are signs that's leading up to that. As a community, if we're engaging with folks that are showing these signs, let's do something. Let's refer them. Let's submit a care team report. And then if it comes down to something that's, presenting a danger, let's call the police. And that's the, best we can do, because there is no one big solution to this nationwide issue right now.
Shooting is not a mental health crisis. I'm sorry, but psychiatric crisis, it affects all people. Who are shooters? They're men. Okay, let's not call this by a different name. This is so stupid. And how can you say the police department is here to protect the community when your department is the one who is full body searching people who are just skateboarding on campus? Your department is the one who's arresting people who are going to CAPS with a crisis. How are you protecting us? That is not what's happening here.
I could add that a lot of the contradictions here could be that there are I think 2 or 3 alt-right groups on campus, in a campus that is the most diverse in the country, along with one that claims, that takes pride in that diversity. There is conflict, and that is defended with the First Amendment. And let's be honest, that is not always the best excuse, because that even allows Nazi ideology to go on just unchallenged. And those are things that, if you want tolerance, you have to be intolerant of intolerance. And that's the truth, but that's not something that is going to be upheld by the Constitution. And that's not something that's going to be upheld by an institution. That's not something that's going to be upheld by police, because that is not your duty. As a policeman, your job is to protect property laws. It is to do whatever the president tells you to do. Whoever's in charge of campus safety, public safety, is the one that's who tells you what to do, that and the law. However, that's applied very selectively. And if students were truly in crisis, the police will only go into action if they're directed to do so. But considering that students have reported that they have been in crisis, however, regarding poverty, regarding being given so many tickets because the campus, because public safety doesn't receive any funding from the university. These are things that do put students in danger, but it's a lot more subtle and it's systemic. It's not something that you can exactly go to the police about, and it's not something that we can expect the police to help us in. So please don't say that the police exist to serve the community or to help the community, because that's definitely a front. That's the PR face, but that is not the actual duty of the police. The actual duty is to protect property laws ultimately.
And one of the things that I've noticed, there's really dangerous language in the fact that the association with cops murdering someone and then that being ruled a suicide or titled a suicide, and that kind of language spread around really reinforces the idea that it's not murder, and it's that's not okay. The idea that things can be easily passed off or dismissed as suicide, and that we've seen that happen many times in the past, where people have been murdered and it later comes out that there was a cover-up and it was marked as suicide. Many people die of suicides as titled, but we have organizers in the South or in the Midwest that have been found shot in their car, murdered, and all of these things. Or interactions with police happen all the time where the victim ends up dead by the end of it. And a lot of these things, the idea that that it could be suicide, or that a lot of it is dangerous to kind of phrase in that way, because
Just for clarification, so I was only speaking in regards to active shooters. Not, and I can totally relate to what you, I come from that type of environment. I still live there. So I can definitely relate growing up and experiencing things of what you spoke to. But just for clarification, I was only referencing active shooters.
I'm going to go in order based on the card. So it's Wendy, Jocelyn, and T, and then whoever else wants to speak, if you have time afterwards.
So I have two things to mention. So when the first threat happened, I don't understand why we were notified 2 hours later. That already created distrust between the community and public safety. And there's already mistrust, so that didn't help. And so my question, well, that's my first question, is what is protocol? What does it take for something like that to be taken? Like, what do you guys do in order for, like, when something like that happens? Because again, we do live in a nation where any kind of shooting threat should be taken seriously, especially in a school, especially when there's children way younger than us who are in the natural science college building, So like, that's one thing I wanted to mention to public safety. The fact that we were mentioned 2 hours later with the first threat, that already created distrust. And that's why there's this panic, there's this anxiety. I'm a student who suffers with anxiety disorder, PTSD, OCD, and major depression disorder. So the fact that I have to come to school for a year now and constantly have to worry, what is it that the police are really doing? What is it that, instead of being out in the parking structure, what is it that, the police is really doing to make sure that I'm safe? And then I'm hearing students on camp where they can't even go to camps because they come out in handcuffs. That makes me not want to go to the counseling here. I'd rather go to my therapist off campus where I feel safe, where I have that space that I don't have to feel like basically a criminal for what I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So with that being said, there's that, and also too, one of my professors this morning talked about it with the students, and that's also what they were saying, is just distrust between public safety and the community.
Okay, so you referenced the notification that was sent. So I want to kind of verify. So what we have is, on campus, we have an emergency notification system. Now, this system and how we use it is actually defined by the federal government, the Jean Cleary Act. And so when we use an emergency notification system, there has to be a verified, immediate, or imminent threat to campus. That means shooter right now, lockdown. So if you receive a notification that starts off with emergency notification, by law, we have to say exactly what it is, and we have to give instruction. So, hypothetically speaking, if there was a shooter at the Annex, you would have received an emergency notification that would have said, shooter, Annex. If you're near there, lock down or evacuate. It's all circumstantial. What we just, the instructions given will be surrounded by, will surround the actual incident. So it may vary. You may be told to evacuate. You may be told to lock down. You may be told to stay clear. That is an official emergency notification, and it has to be a verified emergency happening now. Anything outside of that will be considered an advisory. That was our attempt to just let our campus know what's going on, because it had already gone out on social media that there was a shooter at Annexland, which was the farthest thing from the truth. Farthest thing from the truth. And so while we were investigating it, talking to witnesses, the people that were there, the person that answered the phone, we noticed social media going out of this world. Shooter and incident, which was not the case. So, okay, let's put on an advisory, let our campus know what's the real news, and that's what we did.
Sorry. So as someone who also works on campus, I understand the concern when it comes to, oh no, this rumor is spreading when there isn't necessarily a validated threat. However, the rumor has spread, and there was a very real fear among students, among faculty, and I don't think that's a fear that could have been, that should not have been dismissed. And the students were even shamed in the email sent by, I don't know if it was the president or someone else, but either way, the official email that was sent out was saying, I would advise students to think twice before spreading a rumor like this, in a very patronizing way. And while I understand that there is procedure, there wasn't actually a real threat, that was probably the thing that everybody agreed that, why was that done? Or not even why was that done, I know why it was done, but that was probably like the bad move. The worst move that could be done is minimizing students' fears and patronizing them for acting in ways that was rational to them, that was for their own safety. I think that's probably just the only thing I wanted to add, is the paternalistic nature of administrators against students.
So one of the things I wanted to bring up, and this is in our demands, this is something that we've talked about many different times before. The infrastructure of this campus is not made for a lockdown. I've spoken to professors who have now retired, and how they've spoken in the past to administrators and put in formal complaints and used formal avenues to try and get these locks on doors. Some of those doors don't actually have the locks. They might have locks at the entrance, but the actual classroom doors might have a malfunctioning lock, or have an old school lock, or not have a lock at all. And the fact that the idea of like a lockdown happening and it being successful and keeping the students and faculty and staff safe, I'm reluctant to believe, because we can't even keep our own students safe with the amount of just neglected infrastructure. Elevator incidents. Some of these elevators hadn't been changed or worked on in like 50 years. They haven't been updated or anything. There was an incident in one of the other CSUs where someone was killed in an elevator incident. There are a lot of ADA non-compliant issues on this campus. If we can't even serve the blind students on campus or the differently abled students on campus, how are we able to protect and keep safe the community of this campus when in a lockdown situation? There are a lot of different issues that all tie in together. And one of the things that I wanted to mention with the lockdown, the fact that I wouldn't feel safe even if we were locked down. I don't feel safe long term with the amount of asbestos in so many of these buildings, you know, and the elevator issues and all of these other issues that have never been addressed because they've been neglected by the campus as the campus collects more money for things that it doesn't necessarily need, instead of addressing long-term student health. And so this is something that is easily relatable to the demands that we brought forth earlier.
I'd also like to say that there are students who are not getting the public safety alerts, which is different from the emergency ones. And I think that the public safety alert can go out when the threat goes out, because I think that's really students' concern, is that students don't know what's going on. And so there's this gap between when a threat is made and when somebody says, oh, it's fake. But what happens in that space? That's the space that we need communication, and that it's not happening. And there's students that aren't getting the messages at all. And I know that there's faculty that aren't getting the messages at all, or they're getting them days later. So these are the problems that are happening.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I have a few questions for you. We discussed this during my class time today, and some of my peers had some questions. So
So I'm in the graduate program, and some people did their undergrad at CSUN, and something similar happened at CSUN where something was graffitied. So one of their concerns was, why were we not notified of the building where this graffiti happened and what it said? Because I feel like if that would have been told to us, then that would have decreased the rumors that were sent out through social media. We would have just been honest and transparent with us from the beginning. So that would have helped that what you were saying. What else? In one of the messages, it did state vigilant. It did state to say stay vigilant, but it's like, how do you expect us to stay vigilant, but we have no training in any of this? There were no resources sent out. It was just like, this is what's happening. There was no resources towards CAPS, towards other mental health facilities off of campus. And then I know that some students shared a CSU video on how to stay safe during active shooters, but I don't think that should be a student responsibility. That should be part of admin or public safety to send out videos like that for us to see. Another thing is, I know protocols were brought up, but our part-time staff notified about these protocols, because I know that my professor's a part-time staff and he didn't even know any protocols to follow, and he was asking me and I was like, I don't know either. So I feel that part-time staff should be, as well as tenured staff, informed about this. I know we had a practice drill, I think in the summer, there was no students. Why is it that we're doing earthquake drills, fire drills, but we don't have an active shooter drill on our campus? And we should probably be doing that at least once a semester, once a year. Something else is, sorry, give me 1 second. There was a concern about students being escorted by PMRT, I believe. Is that who's escorting students when they're put on the hold? Is that PMRT or just you, police?
It does.
Why are we not working with the Department of Mental Health and getting the PET team out here? I don't understand. The PET team is trained people that know how to take control of these things that happen on campus, so we should be linking up with them and using them as a resource.
I feel honestly that the question of protocol hasn't been answered. So I would like you to expand on protocol and what campus police is gonna do, and also that was geared towards my question is, what is the plan of action if there is a shooter on campus, and how fast is campus police gonna respond, or is there? I'm pretty sure there's training on this, but what is your training? What is the protocol, and how fast are you gonna respond to this? Because it is a fear within a lot of students, coming to campus and knowing there might be a potential shooder.
All right, so University Police Week, as she mentioned, we have the one big training a year, and that's mandated by law, where we get campus partners involved. We had some student orgs participate in our active shooter training. They were, they acted as victims, things like that. But then we use that as an opportunity to work with our neighboring agencies. That way they know what to do when they get here. Our officers are familiar with our campus. They're familiar with you and our buildings and things like that. But in those, in the case of an active shooter, our neighboring agencies will be responding. So that training is, surrounds familiarizing them with what to expect once they get here in this type of incident. So we train with, LA County, LA City Fire Department, Alhambra, Monterey Park, CHP, LAPD, and the Sheriff Department. They were all in on the big training. And then quarterly, us as officers within our department, we train as well, in between the time we do the larger training. We train on the range, things like that. It's continuous year-round training for us, because we do recognize that, being a university police department, this active shooter stuff is our new reality. So we train consistently for it. As far as training the community, I personally give active shooter trainings. And I would come in, and for this group, I would give a training, which kind of is kind of developed around the video that you mentioned that's on our public safety webpage. This is the same training that we're, as law enforcement, we're giving nationwide, and it's simply run, hide, fight. We feel like we don't want to overwhelm the public. Run, hide, fight, and it also parallels our natural instinct, our natural reactions. But us continuously promoting run, hide, fight is what we want you to think about in this type of incident. We give the trainings campus-wide. You know, and our purpose is to get you to start thinking about your immediate environment, the classrooms that you're in, or if you're in an office space, or if you're in a, you know, if you're in a classroom, or, you know, start thinking ahead now. You know, if you're in an office, majority of the time you're here, then start thinking about, you know, is your door locking? Do you have furniture to barricade? Do you have an alternate exit route? That is the purpose of the trainings. As far as protocols, again, protocol would be first the emergency notification, and it will start with that. By law, we have to start it with emergency notification. That way you won't confuse it with nothing else. Not a campus advisory, not a crime alert, emergency notification, what the emergency is, and then instructions. If you're in student union, lock down, stay clear of music, with follow-up information, follow-up directions, specific directions. That is what to expect in a true immediate emergency. Now, you know, when you mention protocol, a lot of times I feel like people just want a plan. Do this, but you can't really do it that way. The circumstances are, these things are fluid. They even change right in the midst of the incident. So it's kind of on the fly. We assess what's going on, and we create a protocol immediately almost. Don't go here, go there, don't do this, do that. With the expectation that, you know, you keep it in mind, run, hide, fight, and then once we arrive, following our instructions, because we've gauged the whole situation. And that's what it comes down to. We will be giving specific instructions. Our response time anywhere on campus is 3 minutes. That's from the station. Now, you know, me as the chief, I tell our guys to stay out in the field, so that lessens it. But in an active shooter type situation, that 2 to 3 minutes is gonna feel like a lifetime. And in that lifetime, or in that 2 to 3 minutes, it's up to you to decide. If you're able to run, then you run. If you're able to hide, then you hide. But if it comes down to between your life and bad guy, and you fight for your life, and you do whatever it is you need to do to overcome.
All right, we'll go to Nadine, Wendy, and Jocelyn, and we'll have to put a pin on this because we have one more action item, but we will continue on the discussion in the coming weeks. So Nadine?
I was wondering if you can define what a credible threat is, because you kept saying that it was not a credible threat, just so that we can know what a credible threat would be. And my other thing is, I understand that you withhold information for the investigation of this threat, but it also makes it hard for the university because I also work here on campus, and last Monday we received hundreds and hundreds of calls regarding the threat from parents and concerned parents, and it also makes it hard on the university to answer those questions. That's just my reason. Maybe in the future, instead of withholding a lot of information, can we like at least give some type of description, just so that we can know? Yeah.
Each circumstance will be a little different. And again, you know, as I mentioned before, you know, a lot of the details is what we use to solve the crime. His knowledge of those details could very well represent that, you know, maybe you're someone we really need to talk to. As far as credible threat, when we say, what's a credible threat? I mean, that's, you know, it's coupled with, you know, other things. And it depends on the situation, you know, how they gauge whether a threat is credible or not. But we're looking for, you know, motive, demands, things like that. Again, it depends on the threat to deem it credible or not. But and there's a process to it. We could go on all day long talking about the way we assess different types of incidents and things like that. But we take into consideration a ton of things when we're looking at the different types of threats, especially in regards to active shooter. You know, it never really hit home. I've been here 20 years, and it didn't really hit home until I dropped my son off at Cal State, and I started looking at their crime stats. I want to see what's going on as a parent. So, relate. And again, I want to let you know, I'm the newest chief. I've been sitting in the seat 3 months. I do things a little differently. I come from a different environment. I'm local. I'm here. I'm a part of this community. I've grown with this campus. I remember there was a time there was no counselors, there was no CAPS, there was no care team, there was no emergency notification system. So we've come a long way in the time that I've been here, and I swear, I love how we're growing. I enjoy being amongst you, talking with you. Yesterday, my Apple Watch told me I walked 7 miles, 16,000 steps yesterday. Because I was out and about, because I feel what you feel. Then that was an opportunity for people to approach me and to see who I am and to talk to me, ask questions. And I enjoy that. I enjoy being amongst you. I'm accessible. I want you to approach me. And then when I come to these type of events, I don't want to feel intimidated. I don't want to feel like, I'm in front of a firing squad. The same way I don't want you to feel intimidated approaching me. I come from an environment where, law enforcement wasn't all that amazing. Now that I'm in a position to create a department in a way that I see it should be, it feels good to do so. A fourth of my department are Cal State LA graduates. I feel like this community should be patrolled and policed by people from this community. I stand firm on that. People that have been where you are now, people that can feel what you feel, the climate of the campus, that way they can be a little more understanding of some of the things that are going on in this community. It makes a difference. It makes a difference. If any of you want to reach out to me, feel free. I enjoy talking to you. If you want to invite me out to a meeting, I'll come. I'm supposed to be somewhere else right now. I felt this was more important. This was more important. This is me. Again, I'm a guy who started at the bottom. My whole career has been right here. Came in fresh out of the academy, right here. I'm a part of this community.
All right, then. Well, thank you very much, Chief Bohannan, for coming to the board.
Thank you, sir.